Welcome to First Presbyterian Church of Great Falls, the light of north central Montana. We are a dynamic congregation, joyfully praising our God through worship, fully supporting and caring for one another, and faithfully serving others as we share our gifts and grow together through the teachings of Christ. We are happy to share the good news through solar energy. Let us worship together. I get to hear solar energy stories that you all don't get to hear. Stories from the high line of a fellow passing from brain cancer who always watched solar energy. Stories from a gal who reached out because she had not had communion in 10 years, but solar energy was her lifeline. Stories from a fellow waiting on surgery who couldn't get out because he might get ill, and so he watches solar energy. All these stories, but you see, solar energy takes money. We are what's called a paid program, and that means that you all who watch solar energy need to be the ones to donate $1, $2 every month if you can, so that we can keep solar energy on the air. For more information on how to donate, how to support solar energy, watch the screen, or if that goes by too fast, call the church, 406-453-1411. Thank you. And they said, "Sing us one of the songs of Zion." How can we sing? How can we sing the songs of the Lord in a foreign land? How do we sing the songs of the Lord in a foreign land? If I'd found it early enough, we'd have all had a copy of it. But last week, I came across a wonderful little book called "It's Hard to Dance with the Devil on Your Back." Like I said, if I'd found it earlier, we'd have all had a copy of it. And it's by Ray Buckley. Ray Buckley is one of the First Peoples. He's a native. And it's very, very interesting book, very interesting to look at and figure out how you dance with the devil on your back. And he tells several stories, but one of the best is found very early on in the book. And let's see if I can find it here. Anybody recognize that picture? Auschwitz. On the wall of the Warsaw Ghetto, a young Jew wrote, "I believe in the sun even if it does not shine. I believe in love even if I do not feel it. I believe in God even if I do not see him." What enables faith to be transcendent? What enables us to rise above when our circumstances do not change? In every culture and in every time, people of faith have surmounted. They've danced with the weight of the world on their shoulders. In the midst of all of it, they have been sustained by God, and that grace has helped us to help other people. Within the native culture is the tradition of a circular story. This tradition uses story to contain truth, and weaving story then to form a whole. Where have we ever heard of that parable telling before? Oh, never mind. And these little studies, these little stories are told in a circular fashion, both individually and collectively, and they end and begin at the same place. They end and begin with the dance, because it's the way that our lives are fashioned. Not the lines of individual lives so much as the fact that we are woven together in this. We are woven together so that life together, life fashioned together, helps us to dance because we're able to see others dance. Now, the season of Lent is a pilgrimage, isn't it? It's not undertaken to say, well, I'm going to give up chocolate, or I'm going to give up Brussels sprouts. You need to know I've gone the entirety of Lent without once eating Brussels sprouts. I am proud of me. No, Lent is a time when we can exchange our way of seeing ourselves, for seeing ourselves and seeing our world as God sees it. It's a way of looking at life, because so often we look at God through the lens of our life. And Lent is a time when we can turn that around. And how would it be if we look at life through God's lens? How would it be if we could find a way to change our perspective? How would it be? Now, in our home, we danced, but some homes didn't. Dancing in Native culture is a rich part of the heritage. There are lots of cultures where dancing is a huge part of it. But somewhere along the way, we lose it, don't we? Somewhere along the way, we forget how to dance. Somewhere along the way, we lose it, and so it caused Eugene O'Neill to ask, why am I afraid to dance? I who love music and rhythm and grace and song and laughter. Why am I afraid to live? I who love life and the beauty of flesh and the living colors of the earth and the sea. Why am I afraid to love? I who loved love. Why are we afraid? You know, following World War I, Germany was in such a depression that it took an entire wheelbarrow of Deutschmarks to buy a loaf of bread. There was such depression, desperation, and yet out of that, some of the richest theology the world has ever known came. Or how about the horror of the Holocaust? And yet, out of that comes some beauty that breaks your heart, because it is set against that horror of the Holocaust. Corrie ten Boom shares the words that Betsy, her sister, spoke on her deathbed. There is no pit so deep. There is no pit so deep that God's love is not deeper still. Viktor Frankl, who endured the horrors of 4 concentration camps, reminds us that absolutely everything can be taken from us. Our home, our family, our identity, our clothing. The only thing that cannot be taken from us is that we still get to choose how we respond. That response is based on what is deeply spiritual. That response is based on what is deeply meaningful to us. That's why he was able to say, he who has a why to live can bear with any how. And that's why the gospel is precisely about the dance. Because it changes the concept of who can dance. It's about the right to, it's not about the difficult times. It's not all about joy either. It's about the fact that this spiritual life is real. And it's about discipleship that's real. And it's about what dancing looks like when what you expected from life is crumbling all around you. It's about dancing with the burdens on your back. It's about still dancing. And it's about the fact that there is a Lord of the dance, an inexplicable, inexhaustible invitation that continues to be given to us. And that's why our mind and our spirit remember the dance long past when the body is able. You can see a dance even if you're blind. You can teach a dance even when you yourself no longer can do it. It's as though that dance remains somewhere in the memory, because the gospel changes the whole concept of who can dance. And that's because the Lord of the dance does not live inside the walls that we make. The walls that we make, what are those walls? Tradition. And I can't attitude. All kinds of walls that we make. And so we live in a world that hurts. We live in a world where we get hurt. We live in a world where, well, maybe we made some of those walls. Maybe we build them ourselves. Maybe some of those walls around you somebody else built. Maybe we've never known life without walls. Maybe the misery of our world gets way too heavy for us. And then we find out that God dances, and dances in the streets, and dances all around us. We see Jesus dancing. Who did he dance with? He danced with tax collectors. He danced with prostitutes. Jesus sat with children. Now, some of us like doing that. I like doing it, but only if there's a crane to get me back up off the floor. But you see, children in that culture were expendable. Jesus embraced those outside of the wall, didn't he? Jesus danced. Sometimes the devil on our back is of our own making. Sometimes somebody else made it. But here's the thing. There was once an event for a children's ministry held in a fairly large city. And it was at one of those exclusive hotels, you know, the ones within walking distance of all the attractions. The location was impeccable. The facilities were beautiful. The hotel was surrounded by parks and a stream. And each morning, the police department would make sure to move the homeless off the sidewalks so that those preparing for ministry with children would be safe. And that last evening included a beautiful candlelight walk to a river. And before the prayer walk began, the city moved the homeless. In Anchorage, the homeless began sleeping outside the windows of a downtown church. And so one Sunday, the church members all brought rocks to put under the windows to keep the homeless away. It's hard to dance with the devil on your back. Sickness, doesn't matter the culture. Those that have more get better health care. It's hard to dance with the devil on your back. Jesus sat down and said to his disciples, I want to give my attention, my embrace to those that don't matter, because they do matter. They have value. The scribes, they have education, they have learning, but Jesus says that the ones who really understand are the children. Turns out that those of us that have it all figured out, we're the needy ones. We're the ones having the most trouble dancing. Because Jesus embraced those outside the walls, and because he did so, he broke down both their walls and ours. But he was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace was upon him, and by his stripes we are healed. October 2nd, 2006. Nickel Mines, Pennsylvania. Charles Carl Roberts came into an Amish school, let the adults and the boys go, and proceeded to gun down the little girls. 5 of them died. Here's the thing about fairy tales. Fairy tales do not teach children that dragons exist. Kids already know that dragons exist. But fairy tales teach that dragons can be killed. You see, dancing is not freedom from pain, but dancing is what we are able to do in spite of the pain. But back to that story there in the nickel mines, Pennsylvania. The Amish did something very, very different. Money poured in for them, but they made sure that the family of Charles Carl Roberts got an equal share. The day that the Roberts family buried the shooter, there were press all over the place. And do you know what the Amish did? They formed a line all around that cemetery to allow the Roberts family to grieve in peace, so that all the press could see were those black Amish backs. Can you imagine the pain? Can you imagine being able to dance when you have lost your daughter? I can't. But that's why we have fairy tales. That's why we have stories like this. That's why we have stories that let us know that there is a way to dance, even when the pain is beyond that we can handle. Dragons can be related to us. Dragons can be part of us. Monsters can live in the closet. Monsters can live under the bed. All of us know that there are challenges to life. There are real dangers, real demands. And the wounds do not feel different in Albania or Sierra Leone or Michigan or Montana. We all respond, but scars are scars, aren't they? Scars are scars. All of us sitting here have scars, some of them visible, some of them not. But that is why we are here, to show the Word of God to all people and all time. There's a little story. Go ahead, one more. The Lord of the dance, when there are no words, you are the word. You are the righter of wrongs, the healer of wounds, the listener of cries, the possibility in the impossible, and the lap on which we rest. So we dance as we are able, even when it is hard. We listen and we hear the stories. Most of us know the story that during World War II, the Japanese would kidnap women, particularly Koreans, and use them then as sex slaves. Some of those women have such PTSD, they cannot talk. Most of them, of course, are gone now. But here's the thing. One of them got a letter from a Japanese saying, "I'm so sorry." And she wrote back, "I forgive you." And she began to get letters and letters and more letters because the word spread that here was one who would write back and dance and say, "I forgive you. Thy will be done," because it is often those that we hurt and those that hurt us the most that lead us back to the dance. Fascinating story. It's only found in Matthew. One more. Do you realize who was at that Last Supper? Judas was at that Last Supper. Judas got the bread. Judas drank from the cup. Matthew tells us Judas, with the piece of bread, left. How do you do that? How? Jesus knew. And yet Judas ate. We will understand the love of God when we can sit with our Judas. When we can sit with our Judas and know. Because we are called into community. We're called to dance with those that we don't like. We're called to dance with those who've done us damage. Together, we're working to bring about healing, to bring about reconciliation, to bring about the dance. It's about finding the truth. We are called to dance. And how do we dance with holes in our moccasins? There was an elderly Native American. He used to always be there at the powwows to dance. He had a beautiful outfit, and he would dance. But they noticed that when he danced, there was always not just the footprint of his moccasin, but a circle in the middle of it where his foot was hitting. He had such a beautiful dance, but they noticed something else. As he danced, he would come past someone, maybe a single mother. And when she looked down, there was a coin in front of her. There was money. Or maybe, as he danced, they would find someone who found a bag of food. Maybe, as he danced, they would find him sitting next to someone who was dying. When he danced, you could smell the sweet grass and sage on his hair. He had such a beautiful roach made of the guard hairs of the porcupine. To a young woman, he'd give a beaded knife or a sheath, drop money at the feet of someone. In an era and tradition of meticulous maintenance, he danced, but he danced with the whole. This understanding went on. But you see, that's the message. Every moment of his body was measured and planned as if he no longer needed to think about it. The dance had become second nature. He moved his head to the right as the prairie chicken does, and he didn't just now enter competition. Instead, he was dancing with moccasins in total disrepair. Here is the story of the Lord of the dance, because his dance, like that of Jesus, points us to God. Jesus ate with people who his tradition would not touch. Jesus invited those outside of tradition, and by doing so, acknowledged them as friends. Jesus placed first those who had no status or culture. But more than that, he did not allow tradition to become a measurement. It was not a measurement of value. It was not a measurement of status. Poverty was not a measurement of status either, nor of abandonment. Instead, we find those who are wronged restored. We find those who are ill healed. And we come and we take part in the dance because we are wronged and we are ill and we need this dance. The betrayer is given the cup, a movement so quiet. That is the Lord of the dance. That is how we dance with the devil on our back. In this world you will have tribulation, but be of good courage, for I have overcome the world. Dance endured. I am the dance and I still go on. He endured such hostility of sinners so that we would not grow weary and lose heart. He endured the holes in his hand and his feet and his side, the holes in his moccasins, that he might show us how to dance. How we dance even with the devil on our back. I danced on a Friday when the sky turned black. It's hard to dance with the devil on your back. They buried my body and they thought I'd gone. But I am the dance, and I still go on. Amen.